So what do you think are some of the hardest challenges facing the local churches right now, and particularly when it comes to building trust in a community? What do you think are some of the ways to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, community growth only happens at the speed of trust. And so if you ask an average community person what do they think of the church, the answer in general would be negative, straight up. Certainly in the UK, people will talk about pedophile priests, they'll talk about homophobia, they'll talk about all kinds of negative first impressions. And partly that is because churches in lots of our local communities have abandoned the poorest communities, and that's where we're based. And so to win trust back requires personal relationship and care, and so that requires intentionality and being present in local communities, not just as a service provider, but as a resident. Actually, when people ask me about myself in Winson Green, I am a minister of a church and I do lead Seedbeds, but my first thing is I'm a resident here, and this is where I live. And so my patch, as it were, is really important to me. Leslie Newbigin said the role of the local church is to be a sign, a foretaste, and an instrument of God's coming kingdom in a place for which it is responsible. And I think one of the first things churches need to come to terms with is what's the patch that they're responsible for. It's not just their church building, it's the geographical place, a place big enough to live a lot of life in, small enough to become a known character, the unfolding drama. The reasons I think there's a disparity between church and local communities is because the churches are simply not present there enough. Residents are not there. They don't know people as neighbours and as and in non-formal ways. And if the only way they meet us is through service provision or an institutional way, the trust generally doesn't happen that way. Trust happens through relationships. And so yes, a lot of our focus over the years is how do we build trust? How do we join in with what God's already doing in a community, whether it be listening to people. This sounds really 101 kind of stuff, but you'd be surprised, how often do you listen to local community with no agenda other than trying to listen and hear what's at work. But then the other thing is, of course, we want to add value. We want to bring people together. And I think we have a pandemic of isolation and loneliness. It's what's killing. People die on average 35% earlier, but because of loneliness and isolation. And so I think one of the roles of the church is, can we be those people who create bumping spaces where people get to meet each other? Can we be the people who can convene a crisis in a community? Can we be the ones that help convene and respond? Can we join in where a group's struggling? Just showing up as a volunteer and being regular, being consistent and doing what you say you're going to do. I mean, you become the most valuable volunteer that a community has, but that takes time. So I think one of the big issues for contemporary Western culture is we're too busy. We're too busy for Jesus in the community. And so I'm spending time in the community. I haven't got time to spend with my family, never mind creating time for people in the local community. But that's where trust is built. You can't outsource trust. It has to be done personally. And so I think time is a real challenge. I think our addiction to motor cars is another challenge, because when we live where we live, and then we drive to church a long distance, and we drive to work another long distance, and we drive to get our kids to sport another long distance. We're spending all this time in our cars. But if we lived and worked and worshipped in the same geographical area, how much more time we would have for the local community. Robert Putnam talks about every 10 minutes you drive, you lose 10% of your social capital. That is your ability to relate non-transactionally with other people. And so the car, the time, these things are really big challenges for us.